Truth. Unforbidden. Truth. Podcast. Unforbidden. Truth. Podcast.
Welcome to Unforbidden Truth. I'm Andrew. On this week's episode, I'll be speaking with Taylor James. Taylor runs the Cult and True Crime Collectibles website, www.cultcollectibles.org. Cult Collectibles offers memorabilia related to dark history. You can find items on Cult Collectibles related to names such as Jeffrey Dahmer, Richard Ramirez, Dennis Rader, Dylan Roof, Jack Kevorkian, Sam Little, and of course items related to cults such as Heaven's Gate, Waco, People's Temple, and so much more. Taylor recently unveiled the largest Jeffrey Dahmer collection available to purchase by the public. This collection is unique, being that it came from the basement of Lionel Dahmer, Jeffrey Dahmer's father. I was excited when Taylor approached me a few months ago, telling me about this big project that he was working on, which turned out to be this massive Dahmer collection. Here's a list of a few artifacts that are being sold out of the Jeffrey Dahmer collection exclusively on cultcollectibles.org. A Mother's Day card that Jeff signed and sent to his mother. This is listed for $2,500. A Father's Day card that's signed and sent to his father that's listed for $3,000. The 9-page police inventory of Jeffrey Dahmer's apartment, that's listed for $15,000. There's a school project that contains handwritten pages from Jeff, that's listed at $20,000. Jeff's psychiatric evaluation, which is listed at $20,000. There's 2 prison-owned signed Bibles that are listed at $35,000 each. Even Jeff's tax return and W-2 slip, that's listed for $20,000. Those are just a few items out of the Jeffrey Dahmer collection that are being sold on Cult Collectibles. Here's my interview with Taylor James, Cult Collectibles. I want to start off with having you tell me a little bit about yourself and how you got into collecting, then later dealing the things that you started to collect related to cults and things of the sort.
So I was an eBay seller full time. I got kicked off, or I guess I got a listing kicked off, some OJ Simpson pogs, and then figured I'll play it safe and not going to put any true crime stuff on my eBay account anymore. And I ended up kind of collecting and amassing over time a lot of items, magazines and newspapers, and just little kind of novelty things. So at a certain point, I decided, well, if I make a site for this, I can still sell these items. I'm not going to get kicked off. And I can kind of trade for other things I'm interested in. It's probably going to be good for networking to collect things that I'm interested in. And it just like took off. It just from the get-go was super popular. I was able to find really interesting things for the inventory, or at least what I thought were really interesting things. And a couple of years doing that on the side, it became my full-time job. And so now I'm just focused 100% on cult stuff, true crime stuff, working with collectors, working with museums or documentaries. It's kind of expanded from just a website to a whole brand of true crime adjacent things.
What year did you start up Cult Collectibles?
It was 3 years ago. I had a real job, and I left my real job right when the pandemic started, just coincidentally, time-wise. I decided, I'm going to do my own thing for a bit, with every intention to go back part-time. And then a few months later, it was like, well, I guess I kind of got to stick with this because there's not really anything to go back to right now. It was just everything was on pause, right? So I was doing my eBay stuff a little more full-time then, and then Cult Collectibles on the side. But sort of as I went on, I got more confident with doing this, and I kind of felt like I had an eye for it, for finding certain things, for hunting certain things down. So I just sort of went full force and took a risk and committed to it. But it's turned out good so far. Who knows when things go back to normal? But for now, it's going good.
So it's become like a full-time job right now for you, where you can do it and have like a good income where you don't have to work a 9 to 5 and you can stay busy doing this and generate enough money.
Yeah. And I mean, I probably work more hours than I would at a 9 to 5 job. But I get to work from home, and I get to do a lot of interesting stuff. I talk to a lot of cool people on the phone, and made a lot of cool contacts. And even though it's like probably a lot more work time-wise, it's a lot more the variety is fun. It keeps it super exciting. It's pretty much everything that comes up is like a risk and is a challenge. And to have that for every part of my income to pay my bills and pay my rent and stuff is stressful, but it keeps me motivated to like really, really, really work hard at it. Otherwise, it's not going to work,
Right. So I want to talk about two specific cults before we talk about the Jeffrey Dahmer project that you've been working on.
Mm-hmm.
So first, let's talk about it. Was known as an American New Religious. It was known as American New Religious, aka a cult. For those that are listening that might not have heard of Heaven's Gate, can you explain in a nutshell what the cult was all about, who the main characters were, and what happened to the cult?
Yeah, for sure. So Heaven's Gate was it was one of the first things that I got really into when I started doing this. Actually, they were a kind of like a science fiction cult. Some people called them, from California, or I guess they ended up in California. They were from all over, but it was a group of people who, in the early 70s, Marshall Applewhite and Bonnie Lou Nettles met, and they were both kind of New Age spiritual people, and they spent a lot of time together and kind of came up with this idea that they were the two from the Bible, and that they had been sent down from the what is an TELAH, the evolutionary level above human, to kind of guide people back to this next level, which is it was like a heaven essentially, but a physical realm above the earth in a UFO. And they had tons of members coming and going all throughout the 70s and the 80s and the 90s. When they kind of blew up, when things became big, was in the late 90s, 1997, I believe, where there was a mass suicide in a mansion in San Diego, where 39 members, which was most of the members at the time, aside from a few who weren't living there, they all took their lives. It was a very ceremonial thing. They all had purple shrouds on, the same outfits, the same shoes. And that was kind of when people first learned about Heaven's Gate in 1997. So there was a ton of history to dig back on afterwards. But it kind of became infamous for, in regards to like collecting this kind of stuff, because a couple of years afterwards, there was an auction where all the bunk beds from the mansion, a lot of the clothing, a lot of the items from the mansion got auctioned off publicly. And that was sort of, people look back at that specific auction, I guess, as like a big part of true crime collecting history, just because of so many interesting things that came from there, and things that are missing now. Nobody knows where they went, that were bought from there. But yeah, I got super into them for a while because I didn't know they were around in the 70s until getting into them quite a bit and reading some books, and then learning that I could look back and find old newspapers and old interviews and just all this info and all these things they had done for all these years that nobody had really put the pieces together until the suicides.
So when it comes to things that people collect, when it comes to Heaven Gates, I've seen the Nikes out there, and I was just on Google the other day, and it was as low as $1,000 up to $3,900. And I know you've stumbled quite across, some over the years. And tell me some of the collectibles that you've had a chance to curate over the years, and some that stand out to you, and perhaps your favorite piece, whether you sold it or still own it for that matter.
Yeah, so there have been, I've had a few pairs of the shoes. I had one pair recently that I sold, a black pair. They were size 15 or something ridiculous. Getting them in like a reasonable shoe size, anything from like a 7 to a 9, is super expensive. Trying to find them as like a display piece in like a larger or smaller size sometimes can be a bit easier. But those shoes are also just kind of the same make. They're not from the mansion. When it comes to items from the mansion, there's private collectors with bunk beds. There's people with a lot of things. There's been 2 collections that I've come across that I was really excited about. The first one, somebody who was a relative of a member, he was a member, Chuck Humphrey, who wasn't with them at the time of the suicides, but shortly afterwards tried to commit suicide. It was a bit of a news story. And then he became a bit of a public figure and an advocate for Heaven's Gate, kind of saying, hey, these guys, you guys think we're all crazy, but I really believe in this, and these people really believed in this. He started a mail order business where he sold mouse pads and shirts and mugs and CD-ROM sets and kind of promotional items for Heaven's Gate. He ran that for a year, and then he ended up taking his life about a year after the initial attempt. So the things from his inventory, I guess, kind of went missing for a long time. And then I was able to meet somebody who had quite a bit of the stuff, some of the mugs, some of the CD-ROM sets. What else was there? A lot of documents, little handwritten notes, interesting things. That was kind of my first big brush with Heaven's Gate as like beyond finding just some magazines on eBay or whatever. The second collection was somebody I got in touch with whose uncle had bought a pallet of books at the auction. So she didn't really know what to do with them or what interest there was. And we ended up working out a deal for me to sell some of them and to keep some things for myself. So I'll show you really quick a couple things I have from that. So all the books had, I've got a handful of them left. They have a seal from the auction, which is neat, which I had never even heard about until this time, but apparently all the paperwork, I don't know if it's super clear here, but all the paperwork and all the documents had a little sigil. I'll put a picture on my Instagram because it's hard to see on the webcam, but they have a little certified State of Heaven's Gate authentic stamp. Because I guess
that one came out of the mansion.
Yeah, I guess at the time, the people at the auction knew, okay, some people are going to want this stuff because it's associated with Heaven's Gate. The piece that really drew me into it, this is a personal one that I one of the things that I kind of was doing the work for, I was selling the books in exchange for a few things to keep for myself. It's a handwritten list here of alterations for all the exit uniforms. So along the edge, it's got the names of the various members, and then it's got the sizes that they would need. Things like shirt pockets were uneven, right pocket too small, patch doesn't line up with the top button. Just like very meticulous, detailed notes that somebody took when they were trying to get all the uniforms to be super uniform, so to say. I guess they put a lot of care into the presentation and into making the suicides a spectacle, and it I mean, obviously it paid off, because those shoes are now super collectible, and that the imagery from Heaven's Gate of the bodies is just like is in pop culture everywhere. Like it's stuck around, I guess, referenced constantly. I don't think it's not going to stop anytime soon. So this is to me very important because it kind of shows the meticulous work they put into that, into knowing that they were going to be something, they were going to make an impact, whether or not it was positive or negative. They were definitely creating a name for themselves,
What's the most expensive piece that you've ever come across related to Heaven's Gate?
I know somebody who has a bunk bed, one of the red bunk beds, which I would love to have, but it's it's huge. It takes up a lot of room. I don't know exact pricing on it, but I know that it was in the range of being the priciest item for Heaven's Gate things. I think there were 17 bunk beds sold at the auction, and there's only 2 or 3 that are accounted for now. Most of them are just gone. A few of them showed up on Craigslist in some random state that years and years ago. But yeah, I think that specifically V beds from the auction, because they were such a big, like, impactful visual thing in the videos of the house. It's, I think, aside from if you were to get a pair of shoes out of the mansion, those beds are the most notable, most standout piece that there could ever be.
Did they end up taking like the shoes and clothing and everything that was in the mansion that was on the people when they passed away, like the shoes of this person that was wearing this, and so on and so forth?
As far as I know, it was all destroyed. My mind makes me think that it was all destroyed because they were on dead bodies for 3 days. At that point, there's a lot of rot. They would have smelled really bad. There's been some things that have come up where somebody was like, "Oh, I found this a shirt from one of the uniforms in a box of clothing at the auction that accidentally got in there, or a pair of shoes that was in there." But I don't necessarily know if those were on the bodies. I think that was more extra things they had around in the mansion that just got thrown in with the stuff. I think that when it came to the actual bodies and the clothing on the bodies, most likely it was destroyed because it would have been, by that point, it would have been hard to salvage. You can see footage from inside the mansion, and there's like stains on the floor that went like through the mattress from people rotting, that left like blood stains and stuff on the carpets, right? So if the decomposition was that bad, I assume that the clothes would be essentially unsalvageable.
Did all those bunk beds get bloodstained too that people own now?
Not that I saw in any of the pictures. I think they just cleaned them off. That's an easy thing to like wash off or whatever, right? There's never been like photos of ones that have any markings or anything specific. The one even from the auction, there was never anything that looked unusual or grim about them. It was just standard bunk beds. I think for the most part, like the books, for instance, right? Obviously, the books were on bookshelves; they were fine. Most of the things that were sold at the auction or came out of the estate would have been cleaned or safe from any kind of debris like that. I'm sure that I'm sure that they did some kind of sterilization and washing on those.
Right. Yeah, I've never had to wipe off blood from a bedpost. I would have no idea. So next, let's talk about the Narco Satanicos, something that I actually have a little bit of knowledge about, a Mexican cult that was headed by Adolfo Constantino and Sarah Aldrete. Can you explain a little bit about that as well, in a nutshell, what they were all about and where Aldrete fits in the picture?
Yeah, it's like a wild story. That's one of those like hardcore stories. I'm not like a super expert on it. I know that they were part of a drug cartel in Mexico, and they were doing a lot of like satanic rituals and sacrifices in order to kind of protect themselves from being arrested or being caught or having deals go bad. I don't know too much more than that. I know they were doing rituals and they were killing people and doing like crazy, like violent satanic rituals, kind of in the name of protecting themselves and becoming like it was like a cult for personal gain, so to say. It's like they were trying to make sure they could make as much money as possible and be essentially like invincible people, which worked for a while, but obviously at some point that fell apart. I think Sarah's still alive. I don't know how many other people are still alive. I'm not sure of the end of things. I've seen photos of crime scenes and stuff from after their arrest, but I don't actually know the story of their arrest in enough detail to be any kind of expert. I'm sure you would know quite a bit more than me on that.
Yeah, I know with Sarah's case, like it says she's doing 500 or 600 and something years, but her girlfriend / friend told me she's doing like 40 to 55 something years, and she's supposed to be getting out in a couple of years apparently. Supposedly, Mexican authorities aren't going to extradite her to the US for the murder of a US citizen, which I find hard to believe, but we'll see when that time comes. But I know this case. I became obsessed with this case a couple of years ago when I first learned about it, because Sarah did tell me they would cut off, hands and feet and rip off fingernails, and the male, victims would be sexually assaulted for days by other men and tortured and killed, and their spirits would be bound to objects and animals and so on and so forth. And that's when I just became obsessed with this case. And I just thought it was so crazy, like horror movie, stuff, like not even Romero or Quentin Tarantino or anybody could come up with anything as twisted as, like, this is like Texas Chainsaw Massacre on steroids.
Oh yeah, they were hardcore. It was like, and it was I'm surprised it doesn't have more coverage, or there hasn't been a big production done telling a story yet, because it's just like, I mean, the closest thing you could compare it to is probably Ramirez, just in the fact that it was like this crazy, like violent, satanic, dark, ritualistic stuff. But in their case, it was like way more intense than Richard Ramirez. Like they were fully committed and fully like sure of themselves that this is the right shit to do. This is going to work. They're actually getting protection from Satan. Like super brutal cult. Maybe the most brutal cult of all time, to be honest.
Right. And the things they did to their victims were crazy, especially Sarah just sitting there watching everything, blessing them as they were, sexually assaulted over and over and over and over and tortured over and over and over again. When it comes to, collectibles of the Narco Satanicos, there was virtually nothing as of 3 or 4 years ago, and there were maybe a handful of letters here and there from Sarah Aldrete, but I managed to get in touch with her a couple years ago, and crazy enough, I get a call one day from Mexico City, and it's like, "Hey friend, how are you doing? It's Sarah." I'm like, "Sarah who?" "Aldrete." And ever since I've talked to her, she's just sent me package after package after package, and Sarah loves signing her name and sending things, and she has one of the biggest egos ever. And she actually sent me this necklace that supposedly has a Nigerian man's spirit trapped inside of it, and I'm supposed to blow 2 puffs of a cigar every single month. It's supposed to blow some some vodka over it every month to cleanse it. And I guess you'd call it like a Santa Muerte necklace, but this is the necklace that it's huge. This is the necklace that she made, and she called me and instructed me how to clean it twice. I never have. I probably never will. But and this does have blood on it. I'll try to see if I can find it. But when I asked her about the blood, she said I think it was goat's blood or something, and I'm pretty sure she did say that something was sacrificed to to create this or whatever. But I don't even think it would show up on the camera. But and then I also just for shits and giggles, I mean, with COVID-19 going on, Sarah would send me all of her masks, and this is a little face mask.
That's cute. Yeah, I've seen a few of those, not with art on them, but
yeah. And yeah, a few years ago, I know Sarah Aldrete, signatures were selling for $300, $400, $500, but I hate to say, ever since I got a hold of her, a lot of stuff has gone out there, and it's I wouldn't say devalued, but gone down in value, and there's been a lot that's kind of flooded the market. But at the same time, it's an interesting case, and I think a lot of people like to buy things that are affordable and interesting at the same time.
For sure.
It's
especially when you can have access to like high profile, like there's no like friend of Jim Jones signing things right now that you can like see out there. It's hard to find direct connections to those kind of groups. So people having the chance to get stuff from like really wild cases I think it's always a positive. Ideally, anything that anybody wanted to collect would be at a reasonable, I guess you could say, price. But so much of it is just so rare and or it doesn't even exist that it drives things up, right?
Right. And it sounds crazy, but I'd rather have like an exclusive or even just partial interview with an inmate rather than artwork. That's my holy grail when it comes to them telling me about their life and their story and what they did and how they got there, so on and so forth. And that's the collection that I want the biggest collection in the world of the biggest collection of interviews.
Yeah, and I mean, and in doing that, you're archiving a lot of stuff that people don't have access to. I talked to somebody about this the other day, about how you specifically have interviews with people that don't do interviews, or people that generally wouldn't be thought to go after for interviews. So you're getting stories that that just aren't out there. It kind of seems like it's wild nobody else has taken the time to try and do that, but you've definitely broken through and found ways to really get involved with people who aren't known to be public or vocal about any of their stuff, especially on like a personal basis, as opposed to you're not coming from it to it you're not coming towards it from like a journalist standpoint, in the sense of like working for a news network or being a big company. It's like you and your personal connections with these people and conversations with them.
Yeah, and that's what I strive to do too, is make it a point that I'm not a journalist. Somebody like they say, how do you disassociate yourself when somebody's talking about raping and killing a child? Well, I can disassociate myself until I'm done with the interview. Then after that, then I can process it in my mind. I'm not going to be like, you're a terrible human being. Why, because after that, once we're done with the interview, they spread that in the prison, in the state, then, you end up like all these other people that can't get an interview with anybody in any prison just because you want to, shame them and maybe get one good video, some good views to drive it up or whatever. And
yeah, you're not going to get the same info in detail unless you communicate with people like they are human beings, which they are human beings at the end of the day. People do terrible things, but if you take the time to actually talk to somebody on like a human level, it's always beneficial. There's always going to be something good that can come out of it.
Oh yeah, definitely. I mean, even if they rot away in prison for the rest of their life, there's some things that they can, positively do, like even taking care of dying prisoners and whatever it may possibly be. Do you happen to have one of those cards handy? The Aldrete.
Yeah, it's I'm just gonna lean over to grab it, but I do have them here. I don't have the actual paint, but I have the cards. I think that a lot of people know that we've done some things in the past, some trades and some deals together. I think that we have a bit of a crossover in viewership, but if you want to explain these a bit.
Yeah, so Sarah Aldrete actually wanted there's actually a documentary that's being worked on right now in Mexico City actually, and she wanted some true crime trading cards made up, and she's seen some in the past, the Eclipse trading cards from like 1991, 2 or 3, something like that. And I saw that Taylor had done some of Sam Little, the America's most prolific serial killer who recently passed away. So I asked him if he would do one of Sarah, and he agreed. And Sarah and her girlfriend actually wrote the description themselves, and it's in Spanish. And we got a bunch of cards made up, and she wanted a bunch sent to her. She signed some, and she kept probably, I don't know, like 20 or 30, and gave them to her friends. And it's going to be in the documentary, and she wants actually more made up. So she loved them that much that she wants a new batch made up.
Yeah, the when I started doing those, I was like, oh, nobody's continued the Eclipse series since then. Like they are not in business anymore. People have done similar things, but I was like, literally like this style, it would be cool to have some, even if they're infrequent and just one-offs, of people who are not in those sets. So I made a few things, and then I thought at some point, oh, it would be cool to do people that are around today and might be interested and might sign them. So I did Sam Little, and I got them back from the printers, and then he died. So we never could get to him or back. But it was cool because you have a connection with her that we could do these and then get them to her, because it's just like, it's super. I think it's super cool that I could do some art or be creative in some way and make something, and then have it go to that person, and have that person obviously see them and handle them and deal with them. And it's almost a little more personal for me than a letter, having
definitely
a direct thing like that.
So let's talk about the Jeffrey Dahmer collection that you just dropped on Cult Collectibles.
Yeah.
So
for sure.
Tell me how you managed to track it down, and where all it, I guess, how do you track it down, where it came from, and basically anything that you can say, and then we can go from there.
Yeah, so middle to the end of last year, I got an email from somebody saying, hey, I have these Dahmer items, this, and this thing. And I thought at first it was totally just BS. I get a lot of people emailing me saying they find the site and they go, oh, I have this item, send me a payment and I'll send it to you, and trying to entice me with big names or big popular items or really rare things. So I was like, okay, I don't know about this. They left some contact info. We got in touch and talked for quite a while. And I was able to kind of get the full story. It's people that know Lionel personally and had some things in their storage for him that he had kind of just gotten rid of. They weren't sure what to do with it. So we got in touch. We talked for quite a while. We worked out a deal that I kind of told them there's so much stuff here, you know, and there's so many things that are interesting or like for documentaries or books, you know, there's unpublished photos, there's unreleased audio, there's just really rare personal things that nobody's ever seen or heard before. And I kind of said that I think that, you know, if they were to try and sell this all to somebody, that person would just flip it and make a ton of money. The best thing to do, though, for just the preservation of it all, and the smartest thing I thought was to catalog everything, and then spend some time making sure it gets in the right hands. So making sure certain collectors or museums could get it, making sure certain things that might be used in a documentary or in a book could get to the right people. So I spent about 3 months full-time, essentially, organizing this collection, sorting things, doing research, kind of connecting one piece to another. A lot of the stuff is, you know, it's authenticated through the connections to other pieces in the collection. So it was a lot of like researching and comparing the photos. And anyway, once it got here, once I actually had it in my hands, it was a wild experience, because Dahmer is probably the least populated stuff on the market. There's maybe 20 letters that circle around every year, that the same letters that go around and around to the same people, and trade hands. There's a lot of you know, magazines or newspapers and stuff, but to have actually handwritten items from him, there's not much. Anything like handwritten from his father, there's nothing. And to have on top of that, you know, audio and video items from his prison cell, you know, prison documents, it's just things that nobody even knew still existed, let alone have been out there. So I took my time with it. I spent a lot of time kind of figuring out what to do with the best options. And now finally it's launched on the site. Some items, there's going to be more things going up as time goes on. I'm working with a few people on documentary projects for certain things in here. It's really exciting. To have this stuff is, like, I think it's probably one of the most significant collections in you know, true crime collecting or murderabilia that's ever happened, because not only is it lots of personal items and lots of never before seen things, but it's Dahmer, who's the one guy that nobody really has anything from.
Right, exactly. And some of this stuff is pre-jail and pre-prison, right?
Yeah. It's kind of spans his whole life. There's some stuff from when he was a kid. There's some pre-prison, pre-arrest. There's stuff from during the time during the crime spree, or I should say during the time when he was actively murdering people. There's stuff from in his prison cell. There's stuff from after his death. It's very cool. It's a big chunk of history that a lot of things nobody's ever seen or heard before. So to be able to go through it for the first time since probably, you know, the late 90s, it's just been packed away. So it's been a wild experience to be able to see all this stuff and to handle it.
So what are some of the more, like unique items that are in that collection that you're selling?
I'll show you some of the stuff that's listed right now. Some of the cooler things that have gone up. So this is a Bible that was sent to him in prison. You can see that his name is embossed but spelt wrong on the cover. Jeffrey Dahmer. This one's cool because it's got a whole page of dedications from children. So it was given to Jeff as a gift from a congregation. I guess the whoever was in charge there. He got very Christian when he was in prison, so he was part of a lot of like reading groups and a lot of different Christian like mailing, prison ministry mailing services. And yeah, this is just notes from kids saying, "Dear Jeff, hope you find salvation. Hope you get out of prison," which is a little iffy. I don't know if I agree with that. Yeah, but so this one is backed up on, there's a document in this collection that's it shows all the items that were in his cell at the time of his death, and this, and there are a couple of direct documentation saying it was his. Here's one of the newsletters that he got. These are like, I love to collect stuff like this, where it's things that were sent to an inmate. Let's see if we can focus that. Anyway, it's Jeff's address in prison. He was subscribed to a few different of these different prison ministry things, so they would have sent this directly to him while he was there. He was doing Bible study and stuff, and things like this. Like, he was only in prison for two or 3 years, I think 2 years before he was killed. So anything that was sent to him or from him is, there's not much of it there. It was a very small window when those things could have even existed. I'll keep showing you the last few things here, if that's cool.
Oh yeah, totally.
So this is a Father's Day card from Jeff from 1991 that he gave to Lionel, and Lionel saved. It's just signed "Love Jeff" in the bottom. Significant because that was the year of his arrest. So this would have been the Father's Day before he was arrested and put away, before his dad knew there was anything going on. This one, so a lot of the items pertain to Lionel's book. He wrote a Father's Story, which is a very good book about his life and his life with Jeff, and kind of wondering what happened and why things happened the way they did. This is a handwritten letter from Lionel of, I guess not a letter, but a handwritten page of kind of the warning signs for what could have been indications of Jeff's later behavior. It's got before 1976. It's a bit hard to read, but it's got things like pet cemetery, roadkill, drinking, shyness, hitting tree with branches, drinking at school. A lot of things that people know about Jeff now, but would have come from Lionel's book, right? Later things saying the drunk and disorderly, having the mannequin at his house, the Laotian molestation case, pornography / occult books, shyness, social interaction. It's kind of brainstorming for the book, I guess. Some things that he saw as warning signs, or that could have been seen as warning signs in hindsight. The last thing I have kind of pulled out here is one of the coolest in the whole collection, I think. This is a 4-page essay written by Jeff in school. You can see a sign on the top there by him. And it's, 1, 2, 4 pages. Some of them are double-sided for some reason, some of them aren't, but it's very cool to see because his handwriting on here, if you've seen any of his letters or envelopes from prison, it's identical writing to the time that he was to later in his life and when he was in prison. Yeah, I think this is very cool because there's a few handwritten letters, but there's no school stuff. There's no handwritten notes or just things that he wrote down that aren't related to the case. Everything is essentially post arrest while he was in prison or after prison. So to see things from before that is I never knew they existed. I never would have thought to go out and seek them out because I think most people assumed everything was destroyed or lost over time.
Yeah, that is mind blowing because I mean, when you think of the golden age or classic killers, you think of like Dahmer, Bundy, Gacy, and I can't think of anything in any museums from any of them, like from their childhood or anything pre-prison or pre-jail for that matter. And now there's going to be a ton of, or probably not a ton, but quite a bit of, Dahmer in museums, which will be nice for the historical aspect.
Yeah, there are letters as well. I can't talk about them much. Pre-prison letters to family members, which are very cool. But that's kind of on the DL for now. They'll be public eventually down the road, but a lot of things right here are kind of in the process of being in deals or being I'll just say there's a lot of value to the information with some of this stuff, so it's going to be private for quite a while. But yeah, it's to be able to go through this, like on the one hand, it's a bit of a pain that third year in business, I've peaked and I'm never going to do anything cooler. Like it's all downhill from this point. But on the other hand, yeah, doing this stuff is like it's wild to see. Nobody's seen these things since the only who's helping with paperwork. But yeah, it's been a tough 3 months of trying to keep this private and not saying anything about it. I couldn't post anything on Instagram. I was very cautious about announcing this publicly, but it's exciting and it's a big relief to finally have this information out there publicly.
Have you come across anything that's like weird or strange, that's kind of like out of place with everything else?
There's a few things that are a bit kind of hard to figure out, if that makes sense. There's a watch, which I understand to be Jeff's watch, but it's when he would have had that watch or when he would have worn it or where it came from. All those things is difficult. There's certain particular items that have been looking into those items specifically has been weeks of work because there's nothing to compare it to. There's nothing to really reference them to, right? Something that I really think is interesting is there's a lot of letters from the warden and disciplinary notes to Jeff while in prison about requests he made for things or complaints he had. And their responses in life. There's rumors. People know that he went to prison. People say that apparently he would use ketchup and make fake limbs and stuff, pretend to eat them to mess with people, which I don't think that was ever confirmed in any way. And then people know he was killed in prison. But what he actually did on the day-to-day and what his life was like, because it was such a short period of time, nobody knows anything, right? Ramirez, for instance, he wrote a ton of letters. So everybody knows what he did every single day in prison. He almost like kept an archive of it, but it was like, it's like this blank period of his life where nobody really knows what was happening. So to be able to find information about, oh, this is a thing he said this day, or this is a thing he had a problem with, it's kind of cool to build a better picture of that time period that nobody has really seen. And I'm going to have a lot of these things listed later on, or I'm going to have a lot of it archived and stuff. So all this information will be public eventually. It's just a slow process to get it all kind of worked through and to make sure I'm releasing the right things and that I'm keeping the right things private, if that makes sense.
Right. So I know you mentioned a little bit, about doing documentaries and whatnot, but is there anything right now that's, that you have like locked down that you're, doing, whether it's like a documentary with Netflix or Hulu or anything of the sort for, the Dahmer stuff or Cult Collectibles for that matter in general?
Uh, it's a loaded question. You know this already because you're tied to one of these things. Yes, but I can't like get super into it. But yeah, I have. So my goal for 2022, my goal for 2021, I should say, was to have some pieces start to go into museums, which I ended up doing that year, which I was super excited about, because that was sort of kind of a step beyond like just pleasing the collectors and having things being like preserved on a historical level. And my goals for this year were to work with some celebrity clients and to work with documentaries or different media productions. So I have some things happening, like early stage stuff, and I can't be super specific on what things are what, but yeah, there's a handful of things happening right now that even if they don't work out, I'm really excited to be able to get the experience and learn about that world a bit, because I think that with a lot of the stuff that I have here, I could be archiving it, and if I have hundreds of letters that come through me from certain high profile people, if I keep track of those and build an archive, somebody's going to want that information eventually, right? So kind of my focus in the past for this year has sort of shifted to preservation and either publishing or documentaries and getting this info out there. Yeah, so I'm got a lot of projects kind of going on at once. It's nice to have this project public now, so that I can I don't have to keep everything in my life a secret, but yeah, it's all the things that I'm kind of dealing with, I'm really excited about. They seem like very cool ideas and very cool opportunities.
Yeah, it's exciting to see all the Dahmer stuff and to know that there's so much that's been preserved that's going to be in museums and places where people will eventually be able to go and appreciate them and not just know that they're in a notebook being creased or getting moisture in them and being damaged over.
Yeah, exactly, for sure. It's at some point I'm sure this stuff would have been lost in a fire or a flood or have some extensive damage, so that it's very good luck that everything was in the condition it was when I was able to come across it, I'm sure there's lots and lots and lots of stuff, probably more stuff than has ever been on the market from different people, different killers and different cults and cases that has just been destroyed or lost over time. So anytime that I can find a big kind of trove of things is always super super exciting to me. It all adds to preservation, right? Like people are going to be able to see this for years and get a lot of new knowledge and a lot of new understanding of Jeff's case in particular.
So before we conclude this interview, is there anything that you'd like to talk about that we haven't covered yet?
I think that's kind of everything that's going on right now. Thanks for talking to me. It's cool. We've, like I said earlier, we've worked a lot on things in the past, but it's cool to finally have a thing where it works for the podcast. If I'm on Instagram at Cult Collectibles, and then cultcollectibles.org is the website, where there's tons of Dahmer stuff, more Dahmer stuff coming out. And that's just one small part of the website. I have some merch. I have items, so many cults and so many different cases that I've collected over the years. I've always got new things going up on the site, new inventory. So if you haven't seen it, take a look. It's cool. It's been a grind. It's been 3 years working every single day, pretty much all day long, to get to where I am now with it. But I'm very excited about where it is and the trajectory of things coming up.
Unforbidden. Truth. Truth